Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this webinar on the IHI core topic on next-generation imaging and image-guided diagnosis and therapy for cancer. My name is Catherine Brett, and I'm one of the communication team members here at the IHI Programme Office. And before we get started with the main presentation by my colleague Tech, I just want to give you some housekeeping notes. So firstly, we are recording the webinar and it will be published on the IHI website. We'll also publish the presentation slides and the participant list for those of you who agreed to be part of it. And finally, we haven't launched this call yet, so please bear in mind that all information on future IHI call topics is indicative and subject to change, and we'll provide final information about the calls once they're approved by the governing board. Okay, that's it from me, and now I will hand over to Tech.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this webinar on IHI first call topic 2. I'm going to give you an outline of today's webinar. I will talk about the IHI program and then introduce the topic 2 of IHI call 1. I'm going to walk you through the proposal submission as well as the evaluation process and conclude my presentation with some tips for writing a successful proposal. Just as a reminder, there were a webinar on rules and procedures last Friday, which is available on our website, and I invite you to have a look at that. Therefore, I will not cover any rules and procedures in this webinar. So the Innovative Health Initiatives is a European partnership in health between the European Union, presented by the European Commission, as well as life science industry associations. So that for those of you who are familiar with IMI, the partnership is now broader. It's not only FPR anymore, but we also include partnership with COSIR, Vaccines Europe, Bio, MedTech Europe, so that it goes from drug, pharmaceutical, vaccines to diagnostic, medical imaging, biotechnology, industry, etc. Therefore, the objectives of IHI has increased as well, is broader as well. Our objective is really to turn health research and innovation into real benefits for patients and society. We want this partnership to deliver safe, effective health innovations that cover the entire spectrum of care, from prevention to diagnostics and treatment, specifically in areas where there is an unmet public health need. And last, we want to make Europe health industries more competitive. We have a strategic research and innovation agenda which focuses on cross-sectoral approaches in order to facilitate the creation of new products and services, which aim is to prevent, intercept, diagnose, treat, and manage diseases, as well as foster recovery in a more effective way. The goal of our strategic research and innovation agenda is really to lay the foundations for development of safer and more effective healthcare products or solutions that respond to unmet public health needs and that can be ultimately implemented into the healthcare systems. You can find in the link on that slide further information regarding our research and innovation agenda. So how does this single stage procedure work? At the end of the month, hopefully we will launch the call, so the first IHI call. Then you will be invited to form a consortium. In the consortium, as we are working with different partners, we're looking for academics, SMEs, regulators, health technology assessment bodies, patients organizations, etc., to work on a proposal in order to tackle the challenges of our core topic text. Your proposal will then be evaluated, and the best proposals will then be funded by IHI. The topic that I'm going to present today is on next generation imaging and image-guided diagnosis and therapy for cancer. So that the challenge of this topic is to provide early evidence of improved cancer patient care when using next generation imaging technologies and image-guided solutions as part of combined cancer therapies. We expect that an optimized image-based care path from early diagnosis and screening to treatment, as well as follow-up, is essential to improve the outcome of cancer patients, as well as helping optimize the clinical workflows and the journey of cancer patients. Why do we need a public-private partnership? Well, IHI by nature is a public-private partnership, but we believe that the cross-sectoral collaboration enabled to take advantage of potential synergistic effect of next-generation imaging technologies and image guiding solutions, which are part of combined cancer therapies. Therefore, it is essential that different industry sectors come together, exchange knowledge and practices in order to find optimal solutions. The type of cross-sectoral collaboration that we expect should include academia, SMEs, healthcare specialists, in order to leverage the innovative and novel image-guided solutions in diagnostic and therapeutic applications. We believe that combining the different expertise from various sectors is critical to the success of your proposal. The scope of our topic is to contribute to the development of high-quality tools, high-quality data, advanced patient imaging and image-guided technologies and processes for improved early diagnosis, prognosis, staging, intervention planning, therapy, and management of cancer, as well as the follow-up of patients in the long term. As you see, the scope is very broad. And we want your proposal to enable the development of improved artificial intelligence and machine learning, validation and evaluation methodologies for imaging and image-guided diagnosis and image-guided therapy for cancer. The outcomes that we expect from your project should expand the use of cancer patient imaging data sources with improved data quality, annotation, and computability, contributing to solutions that automatically link images to clinical data in order to improve diagnostic, staging, predictive, and therapeutic tools for clinicians, including image-guided tools. We want your project to develop robust evaluation and validation frameworks for artificial intelligence machine learning-based algorithms applied to cancer patient images in order to improve image-guided diagnosis, prediction of therapy outcome, planning and therapy of cancer patients. Last, we want your proposal to be able to propose novel, continuously self-learning, trustworthy, explainable, artificial intelligence machine learning enabled image-guided diagnosis, therapy planning, and interventional systems used in clinics, hospital, as well as propose possible benchmarks. The impact of your project should demonstrate added value for end users such as patients and carers, healthcare professionals, national health systems, and healthcare providers in using next-generation imaging and image-guided diagnosis and therapy solutions for cancer. We want the impact as well to enable seamless and successful further development of the concept and solution developed, leading to integrated products and services delivering proven benefits to patients, carers, healthcare systems, and the society as a whole. The budget that we expect for this call, for this topic in the first call, is an envelope of 40 million euros from IHI funding. However, given the scope of this project, we believe that your proposal should be of having an estimated budget of at least 10 million euros in order to be able to address all the outcomes appropriately. We remind you that 45% of your total budget should be covered by contributions provided by project participants. I will talk about that in the next slide. There is no fixed duration for projects, so here the applicants are invited to propose a project duration that matches the activities of the project, as well as expected outcomes and impacts that you have proposed. In this, I'm going to give you a very simple example of a possible estimated budget for a proposal. So if the total cost of your proposal is of 40 million euros, and in your consortium, you should have private members and contributing partners. If the total cost of your public partners, so university, hospital, SMEs, etc., of 20 million euros, have a total cost of 20 million euros, they are eligible for IHI funding. So the requested IHI funding would be of 20 million euros. They would obviously provide zero in-kind contribution. And then the private members and contributing members, the definition of private members and contributing members, I invite you to look at the webinars on rules and procedures, have also a total cost of 40 million euros. They don't request any IHI funding, so that the in-kind contribution in that case is of 20 million euros. In total, the IHI funding would be of 20 million euros out of a budget of 40 million euros for your proposal, and therefore the in-kind contribution in that specific case is of 50%, so 20 million. This criteria of providing in-kind contribution is an eligibility criteria, meaning that for your proposal, you should have at least 45% of in-kind contribution. If you don't meet that threshold, your proposal will not be evaluated. Proposal submission and evaluation. The template for your proposal is divided into 3 parts. Part A of your proposal is data that you entered in a web format through the funding and tender portal. Those are administrative data. The part B is the narrative part of your proposal. This part B is divided into 3 sections: excellence, impact, quality, and efficiency of the implementation. We really invite you to read carefully the instructions in the proposal template in order to work on the narrative part, because your proposal will be evaluated against those 3 criteria. And then the third part of the proposal consists in annexes. So you should provide the participant type, the estimated budget, and if ever you plan to perform any clinical trials, then you should also provide the clinical studies template. I present briefly the evaluation criteria. As I said, the template is divided into, the part B template is divided into 3 sections: excellence, impact, and quality and efficiency of the implementation. Those are the 3 criteria on which the panel of experts will evaluate your proposal. And then under each criterion, you will have a number of sub-criteria that will lead the evaluation. So for instance, if I look at impact, the panel of experts will be asked to assess how credible the pathway to achieve the expected outcomes and impact specified in your work program, and the likely scale and significance of your contribution to the project is described in your proposal. So those are all the sub-criteria that they will look at. The last one, quality and efficiency of the implementation, has also a number of sub-criteria that I present here very briefly. Keep in mind that for each criterion, there is a threshold of a score of 3 out of 5. And then there is an overall threshold for your proposal of 10 out of 15 for it to pass. I'm going to move towards the last part of the presentation regarding some tips for applicants. We invite you to read the topic text, which is the reference document. All the panel of experts is asked to evaluate your proposal against the call topic text and the 3 criteria as I've shown earlier. All the materials related to the call is relevant to help you to work on your proposal. It's important to work on your consortium very early. IHI is a public-private partnership, and therefore that should really stand out in your proposal. As I said, the 45% in-kind contribution is an eligibility criteria, so you must include partners bringing in-kind contributions. Ensure that all information requested in the call topic text and the proposal template is provided in order to allow the panel of experts to assess your proposal against the evaluation criteria. Two last points. The first one dedicated to this topic, it's important to consider and plan potential regulatory impact of your results, especially in imaging world. And the second point is that it's always good to dedicate part of your budget for communication and dissemination activities. You will be requested to synergize with other initiatives and other projects on this field. We have received quite a number of questions regarding how to find project partners in order to help you to build your consortium or to join a consortium. The first point is really through your contacts, or network your contacts, which is very straightforward. And then, as Catherine has said in introduction, the participant to this webinar who agreed to have their contact published, then you will have access to the participant list. Yesterday, we had the project event for which the participants are also, the list of participants is also available. You can use the partner search tool in the EU funding and tenders portal. We have for each member states a IHI national contact point that you are invited to contact as well. And then the network on social media through Twitter, LinkedIn, etc. So I put all the links here on this slide. And with that, thank you for your attention, and we welcome any comments or questions.
Thank you very much, Tech. So yes, it's now your turn to ask any questions you have. Just type them into the chat. I will add as well, we do have two people from the IHI legal team, Desmond and Carolina, online as well. And they may also be able to help, because I can already see there's quite a lot of questions regarding especially the 45%. So the first question is actually more related to the topic though, so it's for Tech. Is developing next generation imaging probes relevant to the scope?
The answer is that this topic is quite open, therefore it's to the applicant to propose the best strategy in order to meet the challenges that were defined in the call topic text.
Okay, so this is quite a change from IMI, where the topics were quite
prescriptive,
whereas now there is much more openness. So for those of you who were familiar with IMI and maybe applied for funding, I mean, you'll see as well the topic texts are much shorter. And while we're talking about the topic text, I will just add that, again, the topic texts that are online now are a draft. They are being finalized now, and there probably are some changes. So whenever the final ones are published, do make sure you look at those. And the next question is more for our legal team. The contribution from non-academic partners, can it also be in cash? I don't know which of Desmond or Carolina would like to take that.
Yeah, so sorry, this is Desmond. I mean, in terms of contribution, there is a mechanism whereby industry partners can actually make cash contributions, and they're actually called financial contributions. I think they were referred to there in the slides. So yes, primarily the private members, but also industry can actually bring in-kind or financial contributions, or indeed in-kind in the form of additional activities towards the project as well. So I think the short answer is yes, cash can definitely be one of those methods.
Great, thank you. And another question, this is on the funding, because again, this is something that's slightly different, being a single stage topic. Is 20 million the maximum requested IHI funding that can be requested per project, or can this be slightly exceeded? I think that's more for you, Tech.
Yeah, so that it was an example, so I'm not saying that this is the maximum you can ask. The overall envelope available for this topic is 40 million euros in IHI funding, which means that your proposal, if duly justified, can exceed obviously 20 million euros. So that we expect to fund more than just one proposal for this topic. Therefore, if you need more than 20 million euros, then if that is justified in your proposal, that is possible.
I think the key thing here is to really justify that, and also the length, because that's also flexible. The next question, and again, this is for the 45%, so I'm going to direct this to the lawyers. So what about in-kind contributions of companies that are not members of the 5 industry associations? Can this count for the 45% criteria?
Yeah, that's actually a good question. And just for the purposes of everyone here, I would just refer everyone here to our rules and procedures webinar that we held on Friday, which we covered, I think it was 2.5 hours, and we covered an awful lot of this ground in detail. So if at the end of this you need more information, I'd really recommend taking a look at the webinar. It's on the IHI website. And then there's also the InfoDesk facility if you need even more information after that. But the simple answer is the 45%, which is laid out in the legal basis, that is the strict obligation of the private members. So this is something that they're going to have to talk about, as you said, the organizations themselves. But while the obligation to supply it is on the 45%, it's kind of the responsibility for everyone in the potential consortium to start thinking about right from the very start to make sure that that 45% threshold is going to be met, because I think, as Tech said, it's a strict eligibility condition. And if an applicant consortium doesn't have the 45%, an IHI office will check this, then obviously your proposal is going to be deemed ineligible. So financially, it's for the private members, but collectively, in terms of thinking about it and making sure that the threshold is met, it should be in everyone's mind.
Okay. We have another question on the topic now. So for tech, it seems that projects should aim to combine what has already been researched and is already at a higher TRL, so technology readiness level. Or am I mistaken and research and development is within the scope?
So that in the draft of text as it is, there are no requirement in terms of TRLs. Therefore, this is once again back to the applicant to choose the best data and quality of data, the best quality of data, in order to help them to meet all the objectives of the core topic text. So that this is based on your proposal, based on your strategy. What do you think is the best way, and what are the best data to meet those outcomes and to have that impact as defined in the core topic text?
Okay, thank you. And another question now, which I think is more for the lawyers. Are SMEs considered public partners, and can they benefit from cash funding? And also, is it compulsory that an industry partner, pharma or medtech, participate in the consortium?
Okay, so I think both for these questions, again, I very much, after my answer, just refer everyone to the webinar from Friday, where we really went into quite a lot of detail on this. But strictly speaking, question 1, SME. Your SME basically is potentially available for funding, subject to certain criteria. I think because we're talking here about call 1, which is a single stage call. Your SME, I think the default position would be yes, because under certain conditions, sometimes we impose what's called a threshold limit of 500 million annual turnover. But that's more to do with the second stage call. If you're an SME or even a medium-sized or even a large-sized company for the single stage calls, and you're not essentially a private member, then you are theoretically eligible for funding. So that's question 1. And then question 2, which is a bit more nuanced. I mean, strictly speaking, no, there's no obligation legal basis which says you must actually have a private member in your actual consortium. But in terms of the challenges which are laid out in the topic texts, and in terms of the fact that a successful consortium is basically going to address these challenges as robustly as possible and utilizing as many resources as possible, I think it's indisputable that the private members or industry will bring certain resources to an applicant consortia, which would perhaps make that consortium more robust and more able to address the challenges in the topic text. And certainly we've seen in the past, at least in relation to IMI2, you know, we have these two essential components. We have basically the academics or the nonprofits, and then we have the industry who are providing in-kind financial resources and that kind of thing. So what I would say is, A, not strict in the legal basis that you must have one, but two, based on experience. I think that the most robust and the most effective consortia do. And I would also remind everyone that the idea of IHI, I mean, it's written in the DNA of the GAU, is that we're essentially a public-private partnership, you know, and that would normally be reflected in the types of consortia that address those calls that are released through the GAU.
Okay, and of course, I mean, I guess if you don't have an industry partner, you would still need to get the in-kind or the contribution from contributing partners as well.
Yeah,
So.
and the other difficulty is, Catherine's absolutely right. And as we said, for the 45% contribution, thanks for reminding me, for the 45% contribution, that's going to come from private members. So you're not going to be able to hit the threshold unless you have private members in the mix.
Okay, another question more on the topic now. Is positron emission tomography considered among next generation imaging?
Thank you for the question again. Once again, this is really up to the applicant to come up with what they consider as the best quality data in order to meet the objectives of the core topic text. So we're not only talking about next generation imaging, but we're also talking about image guiding solutions, so that whatever you consider as the best quality data in order to meet the objectives of the core topic text are very welcome.
Okay, thank you. The next question is a very simple one. Will the slides be shared after the webinar? Yes, they will be, and so will the recording. Another one now for tech. Could a proposal be submitted on a preclinical stage, i.e. not using patients but cancer models such as animals? I guess it's in vitro cancer model in which we could develop the tools. Tech is looking reflective.
Yeah. We are talking here about quite early stage. The question is about very early stage solutions, whereas if you look at the core topic text, we are more into how the solutions, the next generation imaging and the image guided solutions can change the journey of cancer patients from diagnostic to treatment, going through prognostic, etc. Therefore, if you believe that your preclinical model can help to achieve those objectives, you're very welcome to come up with a proposal. This is once again your choice of strategy in order to meet the expected outcomes of the core topic text.
Okay, thank you. And another question, which is linked to some we've had earlier, which level of development should the technologies be at when we get to the end of the project?
My question would be very similar to the answer I have given regarding the technology maturity of your former colleagues earlier, which means that once again, this is your call to propose in your proposal to give a timeline that you think would enable you to meet all the objectives of the core topic text. So therefore, if at the end of your proposal you think that you can only reach that stage of technology readiness level, then this is your call, this is your proposal. We're not going to be prescriptive on what we expect in terms of maturity.
Okay, thank you. A question now on duration. Would it be negative to have a longer duration compared to other projects?
We don't have any benchmark here, so that it's difficult for me to answer that question. I don't know what is a longer duration compared to other projects. What other projects are you talking about?
I mean, I think in the end, whatever duration you propose, you have to explain why. And you would have to make sure the budget matches as well. And I mean, I would assume that a longer project could be more expensive, and the more expensive it is, the more you have to justify there as well. So I think, I don't know, but I assume it could be something where you really have to think very hard and justify.
And also, if ever you have a duration of 20 years,
Yeah.
I'm not sure that this is.
I think that would be a bit over the top. I mean, I'm assuming here that when we're talking about longer duration, you're talking about maybe 7 years as opposed to 5 or 3, something that we have seen in IMI projects or something like that, as opposed to, as the text says, 20 years, something that will long outlive the joint undertaking. So maybe if you have an idea of what you mean by longer, maybe drop it into the chat and we'll pick that one up again. Another question around the topic: are rare cancers in scope?
But as you can see in the draft topic text, there are no prescriptions regarding which type of cancer we are interested in. Therefore, once again, if you do have an interest in rare cancers and you think that your proposal could address the impact and the outcomes of the core topic text, then you're very welcome to propose that.
Okay, we've got a couple of questions now on the in-kind contributions. So for the lawyers, I will just add that because we're getting so many questions on this, we are planning a whole webinar on the in-kind contributions, but for now we'll do our best to answer your questions. So the questions are: can in-kind contributions include delegating workforce to the project for the non-academic entities? And can we give some examples of in-kind contributions?
So can we just see, in relation to the first question, was it donating in kind to the academic partners? Was that the question?
Can it be delegating workforce to the project?
Oh, workforce to the project. All right, okay. So yeah, I mean, I think that's a perfect example of in kind where you would now. There's a couple of caveats here. I think what we're talking about here is basically a beneficiary who is an industry partner making workforce or resources available to an academic partner. I think that's fine. That's a typical example. And under IHI, we can also have a situation where third parties are making resources, they're making in kind available either for remuneration or free of charge. And that's in Article 9 of the new IHI, well, the new Horizon Europe Model Grant Agreement. So I think that mechanism is well understood at this stage, and I think there is a precedent. You know, I think the flip side of that is either you're making resources available or you're basically making cash available, and that's the financial contribution that we talked about a few minutes ago. So I think this is clear. And then the second part of the question, sorry, what was the second part of the question, Catherine?
The second was, can you give some examples of in-kind contribution?
I mean, an in-kind contribution can be, as I said, something as simple as making resources available, or maybe making data sets available potentially as well. It could be aiding in dissemination abilities or dissemination or exploitation of results. It's a very, very, very wide category. If we're getting into this level of detail, I would refer the querist and maybe other interested parties on the call to the annotated model grant agreement, which is online at the moment. It's easily Googleable. And if you look at this document in detail, you'll see there are loads and loads of examples and best practices in relation to in-kind, when it's basically given by beneficiaries, when it's given by third parties. And it's extremely useful for kind of clearing up these questions. And also, again, just at the risk of repeating myself too many times, the webinar on Friday, we talked about this a bit as well.
And just to be clear, I mean, when you talk about annotated model grant agreement, it's the general Horizon Europe one, which also applies to IHI. So people should Google Horizon Europe annotated model grant agreement and they will find it.
The date of the latest version is the 30th of November. There's a new version coming out, but it's not ready yet. So if you have the AGA from the 30th of November 2021, you have the right document.
Great. Okay, there is a question now on the topic again, with some maths for tech to do. So on one of the first slides, you state that you expect projects that have an IHI contribution of between 10 and 20 million euros are expected. To be clear, this is only the IHI part, so the total budget for the entire project should be more around 15 to 30 million. So I think this is on that table you showed us with all the...
It was, it was the slide on budget, indeed, so that what we can expect is that in order to meet, we believe that in order to meet all the objectives of this core topic text, the estimated budget for a proposal should be of around 20 million euros at least, and half of it, so 45 to 50% that should be the in-kind contribution.
Okay, and another question which we've touched on, but I think because it's new, it's probably bears a bit of repeating. How many projects will be funded?
So we expect to fund 2 projects under this topic. However, once again, the overall envelope available is of 40 million euros IMI funding, which means that if ever one project is requesting 40 million euros as IMI funding and is successful, so it's from a scientific point of view, the best one, then there will be only one project funded under this topic. So that there is an overall envelope and all the proposal will compete to get part of that envelope, and the best proposal evaluated will have the priority.
It's a little bit similar to what we had with our COVID call when we were IMI. So you'll be ranked. So there could be one project with 20 million, one with 15. But then if the third ranked project has asked for 10 million, it would not get through because it would carry it over the 40 million threshold. Okay. So there is another question now about the topic and links with other projects in this area. It says there are already Horizon projects funded in this topic area. What is the link with them, and how should we link with them and build on what's already being done?
Indeed, that's a very good question, and that's the reason why in one of my slides I talked about preserving a part of your budget for communication and dissemination activities, because we expect you to be able to synergize with other initiatives funded under other programs. So Horizon Europe is one of them, but there might be other programs as well funding very similar projects, and we want you to synergize with those projects.
Okay. There's another question now, looking back and comparing to IMI. In IMI, the private partners and their contributions were already defined in the call, but this seems this is not the case anymore. So the public partners need to go searching for industrial partners. Is this correct?
Indeed. So there is a slight change from IMI type of call for proposal. So in IMI, we have 2-stage calls. This IHI 1 call, it's a 1-stage call, which means that we are not doing short proposals anymore. It's full proposal. And for full proposal, you need to come with contributing partners, private members in your consortium to apply for funding.
So the answer is yes, you need to go searching, which is why we had the slide on looking for project partners as well, and why we had the brokerage and networking event yesterday. I will add as well, we are also launching in parallel to call 1, we're launching call 2, which is a 2-stage call and is more similar to those IMI calls, and the industry consortium is predefined there. So I mean, I think as we move on through IHI, it will be really important to really read the topic text carefully and understand if you're looking at a single stage or a 2-stage call, because moving forward, we are going to probably keep having both. And you need to make sure you know what you're looking for in your partners. There's another question on the topic. We have a solution based in deep learning applied to detect colon cancer. Is colon cancer one of the objectives of the call?
Thank you for that question. If you look at the call topic text, there is no prescription in terms of what type of cancer we are interested in, so that it's very broad. Colon cancer is a type of cancer, and therefore you can, if you believe that the solution can be used for colon cancer, then you're very welcome to submit a proposal on that as well.
Okay, there's another question now on, is there a list of private members and contributing partners?
So, I mean, for this one, there's no defined list of contributing partners because at the moment, quite simply, we don't have any. Because to become a contributing partner, basically, it's someone who's coming from outside, obviously, the joint undertaking structure. It's normally a philanthropic organization or a big foundation, and they apply to IHI joint undertaking and say, look, we're interested in topic 1 or topic 2 or topic 3, and we want to contribute to that. They can be brought in, if you're in the process of forming a consortium and you end up talking to one of these foundations and they're interested in your topic, and then, it can develop organically like that. So I think under IMI 2, we had 36 such organizations. Under IMI 2, they were called associated partners. So far under IHI, we have none. But that doesn't mean that if you make an exciting relationship or you actually want to bring someone in and contributing partners the way they want to go, then we can do that quite quickly. And then I would just ask you to get in touch with the IHI office in relation to the contributing partner. And then for the private members, the private members are well defined. It's basically those organizations that are members of the IHI joint undertaking but are not the European Union. So we're talking obviously about the large organizations, FPA, COSIR, MedTech, BioEuropa, and yeah, that's it. Thanks, Tech. They're the private members.
But just in case, I mean, you're asking for more details in terms of which companies specifically might be interested in this specific topic. I mean, there you would have to do some research. I mean, one place to start would be the brokerage event, which we had yesterday. The website is publicly accessible, even if you weren't registered yourself. And you can search there by people who are interested in different topics. You can look at the people who gave pitches. So that would also be a good place to find out who is building a consortium in this area. There's a question on what are contributing partners. Desmond, I know this is your area. You mentioned we've spoken about it a little bit so far in this webinar. Would you like to give a bit more of an explanation?
Sure. Well, actually, what I would do first is I would refer everyone to the relevant section on the IHI website, which Catherine's team has very kindly built for us. If you are familiar with IMI2, as I said, these were known as associated partners under IMI2, and we had 36 of them. And they contributed in total to 55 or 58 different topics, because obviously sometimes you would have an organization that would associate for more than one topic. So they range from organizations like the Wellcome Trust and the Simon Foundation and the Gates Foundation and JDRF, the Juvenile Diabetes Fund, all the way through to kind of smaller organizations like Obesity Action Coalition, kind of the smaller organizations. And the reason why they associated with IMI2 and will probably contribute to IHI is because they're very much interested in specific topics that we are doing. So they were called associated partners. Now under IHI, they're called contributing partners. The rules of engagement are very similar. As I said, I think 2 answers ago, they apply to the IHI governing board saying, look, we are, a philanthropic organization. This topic really interests us. We're happy to join a consortium. They generally don't receive funding, and what they do is they actually contribute to the project, and it's usually in the form of, as we discussed a little earlier, either in kind or indeed financial contributions to other beneficiaries in the project, so that they can support work that's being done. So theoretically, under IHI, we are expecting about 200 million in contributions from contributing partners over the lifetime of the JU. As far as IMI2 is concerned, our current count is 204 million. So I think we're confident that we'll hit the 200 million for IHI. And then, as I said, it's simply a question of engaging these guys, and they can join any consortia as long as the consortia actually agrees. And the process from start to finish in terms of getting them, accepted by the IHI governing board, it usually takes about 2 to 3 months, depending upon how fast they are in getting the right paperwork to us and then getting it in front of the governing board. And the IHI legal team, myself and Carolina, will be working along this. And Carolina, who is also on the call, is going to be taking particular responsibility for the contributing partners under IHI. So if there's any questions on this, we're happy to follow up.
Okay, thank you. There's a question which is, can LEs be part of the call as well with in-kind contribution, meaning the 45% share? I'm not sure, neither Tech nor I are quite sure what you mean by LE. I don't know, Desmond and Carolina, does that?
I got to be honest, for LE, I'm thinking legal entity. That's how we interpret it in IHI.
Okay. Well, maybe the person who sent that can just spell out LE for us so that we can be sure we're answering the question correctly. And meanwhile, we have a question for Tech, more on the topic. So many of us will be cancer scientists involved in both fundamental and translational aspects. From the call, one gets the expression that the highlight is on the translational and clinical applications. Does this mean the quote marks real science with a smiley face? Meaning the elucidation of whatever underlying mechanism will not per se have added value in these IHI projects?
Thank you for your question. The answer is that we're not looking for either or, which means that we're not excluding anything. What I presented earlier is that we are looking really for cross-sectoral collaboration, so that we're not only targeting one type against the other. And we believe that the expertise, the combined expertise, are necessary in order to meet all the objectives of the core topic text.
Okay, and there's a couple more questions on how many proposals will be funded, but I think we've answered that one. There's a comment that, that it would be nice to simplify the terminologies. Yeah, we are very aware that there are a lot of terminologies, and I would again, as Desmond did, encourage you to look at the rules and procedures webinar.
Actually, one thing we might also emphasize as well, just because you've got me thinking about the terminology, is we're very, very close to releasing an updated brand new guide for applicants. And this is obviously going to be made available on the website and will be enormously useful to everyone who would be interested in, putting together a consortia and applying in relation to the calls. And I think the first 4 or 5 pages of the guide for applicants are an attempt. We have a glossary and an additional list of acronyms as well to try and make all of the terminology as simple and as accessible as possible. So I think that's going to be available in about a week or two. I would just urge everyone to keep checking the IHI site. Because we're meeting on it today to finalize a couple of things. We're trying to get it into the hands of potential applicants as soon as possible.
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously the very first call of IHI, and I know that the legal and science teams have been really busy trying to make everything as simple and understandable as possible. And yeah, they're just finalizing all these documents, and they will go online. And if anything, when you get those documents isn't clear, then just let us know as well, so we can improve them in future editions as well. Then there is a question saying, in case 1 or maximum 2 projects will be selected, it's extremely important to find and join a promising project consortium. Is there a specific matchmaking event or platform for this specific call? I mean, we did have a very big matchmaking event yesterday for the whole of all of the first 2 IHI calls, which we're going to launch soon, so covering 6 topics in total. I mean, if you go there, you can look for participants, look at the marketplace, and see the people who've already indicated an interest in this topic. You can find the people who've said that they're going to bring in kind contributions to the topic, people who are forming a consortium, people who are looking for a consortium. All of that information is there. And as I said as well, I mean, obviously everybody on this call is by definition interested in this topic, and we will publish the participant list for people who agreed to be part of it. So those are places as well, but otherwise, you will need to, I would add as well, I mean, Tech also included some useful links on his slides of various other options in terms of the funding and participant portal. Yeah, I mean, you will also need to do the legwork yourself and really actively reach out to people as well. I mean, I wouldn't just rely on matchmaking tools and events, really use your network and put time into it. Okay, then do you want to add anything on that, Tech? No?
Yes.
Okay, good. Next question. We received approval by the Italian government of a consortium made of universities and privates for innovation and development of radiopharmaceuticals. How can it participate in a proposal? So this sounds like a consortium. Can it be a participant in a proposal on its own, or does it have legal?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think the problem is it would depend, but the problem would be that, as Catherine's clearly identified, the first key issue is we actually need a legal entity, which is an independent legal entity, which is confirmed under the national law, which has sufficient legal personality to actually sign the grant agreement, get a PIC number, and participate in the tools, and indeed have a bank account, etc. So if it's a loose amalgamation, that's not going to work. For these large research organizations that we've had in the past, what I have seen work with some effectiveness is basically one beneficiary, one member of this group will basically join a project, and then the other main members could join as what's called the linked third parties under IMI2, or what are now called under IHI affiliated entities. And the key criteria for an affiliated entity under IHI is that you must have a legal or capital link with the beneficiary in the project. So if this group has been organized, and if I'm assuming that there is an underlying document, maybe a collaboration agreement for a certain number of years and terms for renewal, then that would form a good capital or legal link then for bringing an affiliated entity or two into the actual project. So there's a lot of variables here, so I don't want to say definitively yes or definitively no. I think if this is something that you're possibly looking at, what I would recommend is first establishing whether this organization has legal personality, who the actual, if it has legal personality, does it have a core secretariat? Are they the ones who are basically have the legal personality and do all the coordination work? And then utilize our applicant's functional mailbox if you need more information. And what we can do is the legal team can actually do a quick analysis and see if we would be comfortable with you qualifying as an actual beneficiary, or whether we'd have to go with the alternate route, which I've just described with affiliated entities.
Okay, there's a question on ICA, on the additional activities again. There's a question that's saying they've heard about this 2 years window after project completion. Why is it 2 years? What is the window? And how, if the ICA is spent after the project, how is all of this calculated, basically?
No, yeah, I mean, this is
just how.
Yeah, just how and why and where and when and who. Basically, as Catherine said a couple of times, we have quite a few new concepts for IHI. EKA is definitely proving to be one of the more stimulating for our potential applicants in terms of how it's going to work. And indeed, we have done a lot of work here in IHI over the last few months, putting together some concepts in relation to it. So first things first, out of the gate, there is actually, again, in preparation, soon to be released if it's not on the website already, a dedicated EKA guide, which we're going to be releasing, and some of it will be in the guide for applicants as well, explaining this concept and how it's actually going to work. So we understand that this needs some actual explanation, and particularly the legal team, but not just the legal team, the science team, the finance team, we've been working very hard to kind of put materials together that will kind of help potential applicants get through this. So that's point one. Guide for applicants and other materials will explain this. Point two, as to why 2 years, simply, I don't want to sound too much like a lawyer, because that's the rule we have. That's what we've been given. So this is not something that IHI-JU has themselves decided. I think the logic of the 2 years is that it gives enough time for effective contributions to be made after the end of the project, and I'll talk about those contributions in a second, while still being trackable and still allowing the IHI to JU to make sure that these contributions will be relevant to the project. Because generally for IHI projects and for IMI2 and IMI1 and most of the other Horizon structure, in kind, when it's actually contributed, it has to be incurred, it has to be given and incurred and used during the project. So EKAA is quite unusual then, because, and it's something we never had under IMI2, the idea is that you can divert resources after the project ends, to further uses of, for instance, the project results. So when I was talking about the kind of contributions that EKA could take, the example that we used yesterday in the brokerage event when we went through the rules and procedures was potentially if you have results that are generated in an IHI project, there is obviously an obligation in the grant agreement for each beneficiary to indeed disseminate and exploit and protect the results that they actually generate. And there's lots of rules there in relation to that. But potentially, if something quite exciting comes out of an IHI project and we're looking at, can this be, is this worth sustaining, or is this worth broadening its application after the end of the project? Do we want really broad dissemination activities to actually, maximize this result? Then this is where EKA fits in perfectly, where resources can be basically delivered after the project end, when most people have gone home, to basically sustain results and that kind of thing. So that's a perfect example of EKA. It's within 2 years, so IHI will be able to keep an eye on it. EKAA is basically going to be reported to the IHI governing board on a yearly basis. So they're going to basically either accept or reject these proposals in relation to how the EKA is used. So we're keeping an eye on it. And I think when I explain the fact that the IHI office is keeping an eye on it, and we want to track it, and we want to make sure it's used appropriately, that might then give further strength to my reasoning as to why it's only 2 years.
Okay, thank you. There's a question asking if the IHI office could make a list aggregating all private members of COSIA, FPO, MedTech, Europa Bio, and the national associations. I don't think we really have the resources in-house for this, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
And I think it would go out of date quite quickly as well, because some of them have quite a lot of members. So
And that evolving
exactly.
quite
It changes quite fast.
I very much agree, yeah.
Yeah, so there's a question on the duration. So as we said earlier in the presentation, the duration is not set. You will have to propose your own duration for your project based on what you want to do and how you want to achieve the goals of the topic. So you have to justify it. There is another question on in-kind. You'll be happy to hear, Desmond. Do you expect the big industry partners to reduce their funding rate to, for example, 20% in order to provide more ICOP to the projects and contribute to the 45% rule?
I mean, I don't expect so, for the simple reason that they're going to have to divert significant resources to get up to the 45% rate. And when they're talking about the 20%, are they talking about the non-EU? Is that the rate that's being referred here? Because we have a 20% non-EU cutoff at the program level. But then the 20% non-EU, which is kind of default at the project level, has actually been revised to 100% for calls 1 and 2. So that won't apply here. So I think, because I'm not exactly sure exactly what's being asked, I think the general point I would make is, because they have to get to the 45% rate, the private members are going to, I would expect, have to dedicate significant resources to the actual projects. Because they're not going to get remuneration, they're not going to get their costs, reimbursed. I don't see any connect between their 45% obligation and the resources that they're actually going to apply to the project generally. And for similar reasons, because the applicant consortia, the non-private members, are on a 100% reimbursement flat rate anyway, and a 25% rate for indirect costs. I don't really see any connect between the two. I think it's clearly understood that both the non-industry partners and the industry partners have their collective responsibilities. And if everyone, this is why I said from the start, the 45% is the strict legal obligation, and it's the financial obligation of the private members. But if they don't do it, then everybody fails. So it's everyone needs to think about it. But I don't see. I don't, because it's such a clear threshold. I think it's hard to see why or even how they could really game the system towards kind of like mitigating their costs elsewhere. I think that's the short answer I can give.
Okay. There's another question now on the topic. Why are we saying at least 20 million euros per project? I could envisage a proposal centered only on one cancer type that will cost, say, 6 to 8 million euros. Would such a project be disregarded simply because of the low requested budget?
The simplest answer is no. If ever you submit a proposal with a budget between 6 to 8 million euros, your project will be, it's not an exclusion. The reason why we gave this range of budgets is because when we wrote the core topic text, we have consulted a number of stakeholders involved in this field. And they said that in order to meet the objectives of this core topic text, they believe that the resources needed would be of at least 20 million. However, if you believe that you can reach the same objective with a lower budget, we are very happy to consider your proposal. Just keep in mind that it's not only because you're looking at one type of cancer, because we are looking into early diagnostic, prognosis, staging, intervention planning, therapy, and management of cancer patients, as well as the follow-up, so that it's not only one cancer, but it's also the spectrum of the intervention.
Okay, thank you. Now there's a question more on our rules and procedures, specifically on what costs are eligible, I think. And the question is, I also understand only staff with a permanent position can apply, and the salary for a named investigator is not included.
I'm not sure I understand that question. What we want to say is that the list of participants should be provided so that the panel of experts, when they evaluate your proposal, they are sure that you have the expertise, that you have the right personnel to perform the work. If ever, so that if you don't have any investigator available in order to perform the work, and you're waiting to be granted the fund in order to start employing people, I don't know, but for the panel of experts, I'm not sure that they will be confident that you will be able to implement the project as you proposed. So this is once again a risk that you take. You are welcome to submit your proposal, but it's a risk that you take.
Okay, and someone is asking if you can register on the platform for matchmaking, and it's actually already been answered in the chat as well, that you can't register anymore because the event is over, but you can still view and search through the participants. And there's another question on this funding allocated to the projects. Why do we not allocate less funding for more projects, but rather than large funding for 1 or 2 projects? Is this going to stay as it is in the long run?
Thank you for the answer. The answer is that we want to have an impact. We want to have a significant impact from our project, and that's the reason why we want to fund good proposal with enough resources. We want to mobilize sufficient fund so that the consortium can really make transformative innovation during the time of the project. That's the reason why we are looking for big projects.
Okay, and now a question on that's probably more for Desmond and Carolina. Can European research infrastructures be part of a consortium, or should it rather be the individual institutes or members of the research infrastructure?
Yeah, I think that comes back to the question we were talking about. I think it was the Italian grouping. I would expect, now this is an answer based on previous experience, I would expect that it would be the individual legal entity that will basically do it. But if there's other members of the infrastructure who wish to contribute or are actually going to bring something particular to the actual project, then we could bring them in as affiliated entities. But I would have the feeling that by default, we would basically go with the individual members applying under directly to the IHI project as specific beneficiaries.
Okay, I don't think I can see any additional questions for now. So if you still have some questions, then do get typing quite quickly. But otherwise, again, I mean, a lot of information is going to be published on the IHI website in the next couple of weeks or so relating to the calls, not only the call itself when it launches, but also all the surrounding documents. As Desmond said, we have a guide for applicants, which is hopefully going to be extremely comprehensive and will answer a lot of the questions. We have a guide on the in-kind contributions to additional activities, which is something new in the IHI as well. And as well, I mean, already we have the rules and procedures webinar, which Desmond gave a very extensive presentation on Friday and answered a lot of questions. Someone is asking when we will get the webinar information. We'll be publishing it in the next day or so. So I'm working together with my colleague Tom, who's also online and who's been answering some questions in the chat. We'll get that online soon. There's a good question has just come in. How realistic are the coming deadlines with all the information that still needs to be published?
I guess, are we talking about I mean, I think the timelines are quite realistic. I mean,
the documents, the thing is that the call is not published yet, and therefore the clock has not started to tick. Therefore, all the documents that you will need to apply will be available once the call will be available as well.
Yeah, I'd very much agree with that. I think it's two independent time frames, but they're reliant as well. One won't go unless the other is ready as well. But I think the documents that we referred to, they're at an advanced stage of finalization, and I mean, I'd say they'll, particularly in relation to the guide for applicants, which I said we're working on later today, that'll be available in quite early course now.
And the reason why we had started doing the webinars before the call launch is to enable the partners to start forming consortium, start thinking in terms of strategy in order to work on their proposal in time. And therefore, we allow you more time to work on your proposal before the submission deadline.
Yeah. I mean, this is obviously, of course, the first call of IHI. I mean, so we're all, you know, working hard to get everything ready all at the time. There is another follow-up question now on this question of whether only permanent faculty can be investigators or partners. If yes, there may not be salary under costs, but if a person having expertise should be included, but they have to be salaried, is that okay with IHI proposals? How does it work? So I think this is really a question on the eligibility of personnel costs.
So all costs incurred during the lifetime of the project, especially related to personal costs working on the project, are eligible for funding. Therefore, this is your strategy once again when you work on your proposal to convince the panel of experts that the personnel involved in the implementation of your project will have the relevant expertise to implement the project.
Okay, I don't see any more questions for now. I mean, as we said, I realize the timelines are tight, but again, that's why we started publishing the draft texts I think a month or so ago at least, so to give you that extra time. And that's something we're committed to doing as well in the future as well for future calls. So I don't see any additional questions for now. So I will close the webinar and say thank you very much to Tech for your presentation and for answering all the questions. Thank you as well to Desmond for answering questions and for Carolina as well for being on hand. And thank you to all of you for your interest. And again, if you have questions on eligibility, I would suggest go and check the Rules and Procedures webinar. And for very specific cases as well, you can always email us infodesk@ihi.europa.eu and we'll get back to you. Okay, thank you very much, everyone.
Bye-bye.